Hello my sweet friends, welcome back. Let's talk about the books that I read in September. First of all, I do have to make it very well known that this month I completed my monthly TBR. Thank you for the applause. I really appreciate it. This is a really big deal. I read all 6 books that I put on my monthly TBR at the start of September. All 6 of them. I read them. Thank you so much. Huge deal, I know. But I haven't done that in so long, so that was just very exciting. I feel so accomplished. I know that I won't do that every month because I'm a mood reader, but this month I read them all. So it'll probably be another 6 months or so before I do that again. Don't expect it from me anytime soon. Apart from that, just some general information. I read 11 books this month. I would say I had a good reading month, but not a great reading month. And I mean that because I didn't have any new 5-star reads or any books that I was even just really obsessed with. I had a lot of fun and I actually found quite a few 4-star reads. So definitely not a bad reading month at all. But every month there's this little part of me that hopes that I find just a new book that I'm utterly obsessed with. And that just doesn't happen every month, and this month was just one of the months where that didn't happen. And that's okay, but I'm hoping and praying that maybe October will be a month with some new favorites. We'll have to wait and see. I did, however, do 2 rereads, so those were fantastic and we'll get into them in a bit. But let's actually start talking about the books that I read in September. I started off by reading Love Unwritten by Lauren Asher. This is the second book in the Lakefront Billionaires series. The first book is Love Redesigned. Second book is Love Unwritten, and in this book we are following Raphael and Ellie. Ellie is Raphael's nanny. Raphael's son's nanny. I guess she technically works for Raphael, but she doesn't nanny Raphael. You know what I mean? She's a nanny for Raphael's son, and Raphael's son is the sweetest little boy. I think he's around 8 years old or something, and the relationship that he has with Ellie is just so sweet. And of course, as you can assume, Raphael and Ellie just have some chemistry, some feelings for each other, but they don't want to act on those feelings because they want to remain professional. But obviously that gets harder and harder, and they also go on a trip to Hawaii, which is really fun. I really liked that element of the book because I felt like it just created some really fun environments for scenes to take place, like sandcastle building competitions and fun little dinners out with the family. It was just a really sweet addition to the book. I also think it's really fun to have a book that's part set in a small town, but then also part of it takes place in a different location. I don't know, it made it feel a little bit more fun and a little bit different from other small town romances that I've read. And I ended up giving it a 3.5. I think in my vlog where I read it I gave it 3.75, but I think I'm going to bring it down to a 3.5 because whilst I did enjoy it, I had a fun time, it just wasn't a favorite for me. It's not one that I'm going to really think about. I enjoyed our characters, but I didn't necessarily feel super connected to them, and I just felt like this book was way too dragged out, you know? I just felt like it didn't need to be as long as it was. It's over 600 pages. Sometimes when I look at a romance book and it's really long, I'm like, oh my gosh, why would it need to be that long? And then I read it and I get it, and I'm like, okay, this was actually worth however many pages it was. But for me, as soon as I got to I don't know, maybe 100 pages or 150 pages out from the end, I was like, we could wrap this up in 30 pages. We could have the conclusion coming very soon, and the author just chose not to. It didn't feel necessary for it to be as long as it was. I've heard some people say that they really enjoyed the length of it, so I think that's just a personal preference thing, and if you really connect to the characters in the story, you may really love that it's a little bit longer because you can spend more time with characters that you really love. But for me, I just didn't feel like it needed to be this long. So 3.5 stars from me. I'd still definitely recommend it. It's just not one of my top favorites. Next, I read The Rule Book by Sarah Adams, and this was so much fun. This is a second chance romance. We follow Nora and Derek. Derek is a football player and Nora becomes his agent, and it turns out that they used to date when they were in college, and nothing necessarily went wrong. Sorry if you can hear that noise outside. And so she broke up with him. Derek was heartbroken about it. He was ready to marry her. He was obsessed with her, and they broke up. They went their separate ways. They obviously both went on to pursue different careers, and now they've been brought back together because they have to work together. And again, it's one of those situations where it's we can't have feelings for each other because we need to remain professional, and Nora wants this job so badly. This is a highlight of her career, so she really wants to prove herself. But Derek is obsessed with her from the beginning because he never got over her, really. really. And Nora doesn't seem like she's obsessed with him, but you can tell that she still has feelings for him too. They're both kind of like the one that got away for each other, so being reunited is just reigniting all of those feelings, I guess. But I just love this. I thought it was so much fun. I thought it was very cheesy, but in a good way. I feel like to read a Sarah Adams book, I just need to be in a very specific mood because her writing is quite cheesy and just like goofy and funny. And I know that that's not everyone's cup of tea, but I personally really enjoy it if I'm in the right mood for it, and I was in the right mood for this one. So I ended up giving it 4 stars. I definitely recommend it. It's set in the same world as a cheat sheet, so you get to see cameos or snippets from the characters that were in the first book, which is just really fun. I don't think you have to read the first book in the series, The Cheat Sheet, but you might have more fun being able to kind of pick up on those cameos and being able to see those characters. So I'd recommend reading The Cheat Sheet first, but you don't have to. But they're both good. They're both kind of the same sort of vibe, so I'd recommend them both if you haven't read either of them. I do think that like the When in Rome little series that Sarah Adams has started writing is my favorite over this world, but I enjoy them all. Next up, I did a reread of Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton, and I absolutely adored this. This is one of my favorite nonfiction books ever. I think partly because it doesn't feel like nonfiction. It really feels like you're just reading the story of someone's life. Well, you are reading the story of someone's life, but it feels quite fictional because it's just like storytelling. This is Dolly Alderton's memoir, mostly of her 20s, but it also talks a little bit about her teenage years as well, and just what it's like being a girl in your 20s, the lessons that you learn, the mistakes you make, dating, friendships, jobs, just like life in general. And like I said, this is my second time reading it, and I loved it the first time. I loved it the second time. I cannot recommend it enough. I love the way Dolly Alderton writes. It just feels, I don't even know, just like, it just feels like girlhood. I also really recommend the audiobook because for my reread this time, I listened to it as an audiobook and Dolly Alderton herself reads it, and I just thought she did a fantastic job. Love, love, love this, and I think I'll probably reread it or re-listen to it many more times in the future. Next, I read Girl Serpent Thorn, and this is just such a good feeling because I have had this on my TBR cart for years. I don't know if it's since 2021 or 2022, either one of those, definitely like multiple years, which is just not my favorite thing. I don't love having books on my TBR for like years and years because I feel like the longer it's on my TBR cart, the less I want to read it. I don't know what it is about it, but it's just not a good sign for me. So I'm really glad that I picked it up. This was on my monthly TBR, so that was kind of the little bit of motivation that I needed to pick it up. This is a YA fantasy book and it's a standalone. So if you are looking for more standalone fantasy books, and this one is pretty short and sweet, I would definitely recommend it. I think I gave this one 4 stars. Like, I had a great time and I was not expecting to enjoy this one as much as I did. It has a very like fairy tale kind of feel to it. It's about a princess who was cursed as a baby and now she has a poisonous touch, so she cannot really interact with anyone or be like in society because she is just dangerous to everyone. So she is locked away in the castle and just can't really live a normal life, and she is really sad about it. So she basically is doing everything she can to figure out how to get rid of this curse so that she can just be a normal girl. It's a lot more complicated than that, and I loved like the magic system that was in this book. There's kind of like these magical creatures that all have these different powers, and she kind of goes to them for help, which is kind of frowned upon by her family. So it's all just very interesting. A lot of family dynamics, a lot of secrets, a lot of like deals made with different magical creatures, which is always very interesting. And there's also a romance. Yeah, just one that I feel like I haven't heard a heap about, but I thought it was really fun. I also decided to pick up The Grandest Game by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is, I thought it was like a continuation of The Brothers Hawthorne, but I think it's actually the start of like a separate duology. If you don't know the world of Jennifer Lynn Barnes, this is part of the Inheritance Games world that she has created. So you have the original Inheritance Games trilogy, and then you have The Brothers Hawthorne, which follows 2 of the brothers that you meet in the original trilogy and kind of like what their life is like following the original trilogy. And then you have this book, and I can't explain the ins and outs of it because it is very much tied to the original trilogy, and if you don't read that, then this will kind of spoil what happens, I guess, in the original series. How can I describe this without ruining anything? This book follows the start of something new. It follows The Grandest Game, which is like this ultimate game situation. It is kind of like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, where it's like if you get a golden ticket, you get to go to see the chocolate factory, like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. In this world, if you get one of these like golden ticket like things, you get entry into the grandest game, and if you win, it's like a huge deal. So it's full of like strategy and lots of riddles, and they have to complete a lot of like competitions and missions. The way I heard people describe the Inheritance games, like the original trilogy, people were like, it's like an escape room but in a book. And that is also how I would describe this one. It feels like a giant escape room because it's just people trying to complete all of these different tasks to be able to win this big competition. And we are following some old characters and some new characters. So that's why I feel like it's kind of its own new thing, because we do get a whole lot of new POVs, but some of them were like side characters in previous books and things like that. So don't know if I explained that very well, but that is what this book is about. And I think there's going to be another book in this series as well. If I'm being honest, does this book need to exist? Probably not. Would I even recommend continuing the Inheritance games like megaverse after you finish the original 3 books? Maybe. I personally am a huge fan of the original 3 books. I think they are so much fun. I absolutely adored them. And so I think I will probably continue reading everything that Jennifer Lynn Barnes puts out, because I think I've read, I don't know, like 11 books by her. And I just eat every single one of them up. So at this point, I'm just reading whatever she puts out, but I can see why people don't really enjoy these like spin-offs as much as they enjoy the original books. I definitely recommend the original books, but I don't know if I recommend these ones as much. I always have a lot of fun with them. I'm just not as obsessed with them. But I gave this one like 3.5. A lot of fun, but not like, oh my gosh, you need to read it right now. Then I picked up Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. This is the second book in the Rose Hill series, which is basically just a small town romance series. In this book, we are following West and Skylar. West is a horse trainer, horse handler, I'm not really sure. Basically like ranch vibes. Has a lot of horses, has to look after the horses, is the vibe I get. I don't really know the like official situation. And he's also the single dad of 2 kids who are just the sweetest, most fun addition to this book. Absolutely loved them. And then we have Skylar, who is a famous country music singer. However, she is living a very restricted life. Her dad and her manager are just very much in control of what she does, what she doesn't do, what she says yes to, what she says no to. And she is just sick of it. She just wants some freedom. She wants to live her life, but she also still loves music, loves singing. And so she decides to drive to Rose Hill because she knows a guy called Ford who owns a recording studio there. And if you don't know, Ford is the MMC of the first book in this series, so it's all connected, of course. And she drives there because she's like, I want to create my own album that is just like not under my dad. It's not my dad telling me what to do. It's just completely my own creation. I want to write it, I want to make it, I want to do everything. But she has nowhere to live, so she ends up living in West's like guest house kinda, because he lives right next to the recording studio. So that's kind of the setup. It just goes from there. West and Skylar are just such a fun couple. I really loved seeing their romance. I thought they were just like funny but also really sweet. I loved the like little emails that West would send Skylar that you got to see at the start of some of the chapters. I don't know, it was just sweet, it was fun, it was entertaining. The conflict made sense. The kids were such an incredible addition to the book. I feel like they made it so just entertaining and silly and goofy. I literally binged it in like a day and I ended up giving it 4 stars. I think I just wanted, I don't know, just something a little bit more. I don't know what it was, but it just didn't give me that 5-star feeling, and that's totally fine. I still definitely recommend it. I think I just wanted to connect to the characters a little bit more. I feel like they had depth, but I wanted a little bit more depth, you know, like things like that. Like it was almost there, but just like not quite there for me. I can't even exactly explain why, but I still definitely recommend it, and I can't wait to see the next book in this series. I think it'll be really good. Then I did a reread of Beach Read, and this was the highlight of my month. This was absolutely amazing, so much fun. I adore this book. I adored this reread. It was just such a fun time. I fully annotated it as well, which I think is so fun for when I do future rereads, or if I ever just want to go back and flick through like quotes and things. They're all tabbed and underlined. I just love this book. I really could go on and on and on about it, but Emily Henry's writing is just incredible. She really is just one of my top favorite authors of all time. She is so well known and so well loved, but for good reason, I think, personally. I just feel like her books deserve all the hype they get. If you haven't read this, this is your sign. pick up Beach Read, please, because it might become a favorite for you like it is for me. Next, I picked up Death at Morning House by Maureen Johnson. This is another YA like mystery thriller kind of situation, and in this book we are following Marlo, who has moved into this like guest house kind of thing on this island to work a summer job as a tour guide. And the reason why this island needs tour guides is because it kind of has this very interesting past, and it's become a bit of a tourist attraction because there is this beautiful big like manor house where this really rich family used to live many decades ago, and the family was just very odd, very interesting, and there were a few mysterious deaths that occurred. And so now, many decades later, it's kind of a bit of like a tourist can come and see the beautiful architecture and the beautiful history of the house and of the island, but also they can hear about the rumors and the speculation about these mysterious deaths and kind of, you know, find out what happened. But like I mentioned, Marlo is a tour guide, and so it is her job to show people around, but she quickly realizes that all of the other teenagers that she is working with for this summer job are best friends, and one of their other best friends mysteriously died very recently. So she is kind of trying to figure out what happened with that whole situation because it's very suspicious. And slowly she also starts to wonder what was happening with these mysterious deaths all those decades ago. So there's a couple different mysteries going on, and you are following a past and present timeline. And the past timeline is like the family that lived there that was a bit odd, and you figure out what happens there. And then the present one is Marlo trying to figure out what's going on. So if you just want like a fun, quick little YA thriller mystery, I think if you like Karen M. McManus or Holly Jackson, Jennifer Lynn Barnes, those types of authors, you'll probably enjoy Maureen Johnson. She also wrote the Truly Devious series, which I love. So I ended up giving this 3.75. I thought it was a fun time. I really enjoyed it and I definitely recommend it, but it wasn't like a favorite of mine. The last book that I needed to complete from my monthly TBR was Love Unleashed by Melanie Sayward, and I did complete it, which I'm very happy about. I think this is classified as romance, like adult romance, but I would almost say it's like romance slash women's fiction. So do with that what you will. I felt like it was more of a women's fiction than it was a romance because it was much more about like character development and figuring out who you are, almost like a coming of age, but like as an adult rather than like as a teenager, if that makes sense. But I really enjoyed my read of this. I got this book in PR, so I'm actually going to read exactly what the author says on the note because I feel like she explains it very, very well. But she said, "This is a story about an Aboriginal girl who moves to New York dreaming of working in the publishing industry only to end up at a doggy daycare. It's based on my own experience of chasing big dreams in New York only to have things not go according to plan. I hope you love it." So a huge shout out to this author. I do think a huge reason as to why I enjoyed it so much is because it is about a woman from Brisbane going to New York, and I live in Brisbane, so just like reading a book that is set or partly set in a place that you know so well and mentions suburbs that you know so well and places that you just see all the time is just really refreshing because we don't get a lot of that in Australia. There are a lot of Australian authors, don't get me wrong, but I feel like the publishing world is full of a lot of authors from the UK and from America, and I just read a lot of books set in either of those places or in like fantasy worlds. So yeah, seeing like my actual own city represented in this book was just a lot of fun. And then because I've recently traveled to New York, it was so fresh in my memory, and so that was also really fun. So like I mentioned, I feel like that is a huge reason as to why I enjoyed it so much because it just felt so personal. There are a lot of things in this book that I can't relate to that I think a lot of other people could relate to. The author discusses racism, size inclusivity, queerness, lots of different things, and so I can't relate to all of them, but there were a few things that felt very relatable that just made me feel very connected to the story, and I just really enjoyed it. It's just about a girl in her 20s trying to figure out life, chasing her dreams, and if you want to read about that with also just some like fun little scenes of her working in a doggy daycare where things go wrong and she just has to figure it out, I don't know, it was just fun. I enjoyed this a lot, but like I mentioned, I would say it was more women's fiction compared to romance. Like obviously there was romance in it, but it felt much more about the character just like figuring herself out, figuring life out with a romance on the side, if that makes any sense. I gave this one 3.75. I honestly really enjoyed it, really recommend it. It wasn't one of those books that I think I'll like think about a lot in the future, but it was one that was just like perfect for just like this stage of life that I'm in right now, and just like, yeah, I definitely recommend it. Also, such a cute cover, like you're literally kidding. Pink covers are always just my absolute favorite. And the last book that I'm gonna talk about is When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker, another Australian author. We love to see it. This is an adult fantasy book. I think it is the start of what will be a series forgive me if I'm wrong. I'm not gonna lie, I actually haven't finished this yet. I have about 100 and something pages left, but I had to film this video a little bit early because I'm going on a trip and wanted to have this still go up for you guys. So I am planning on finishing this by the end of September, but I haven't quite finished it yet. So take my review with caution, because obviously I can't give you like my final thoughts. But this, oh my gosh, like I actually don't think I could give a synopsis of this, because like what even is this book about? We follow a girl who is a kind of an assassin, I guess. It is quite reminiscent of Throne of Glass to me in some ways, and I really hesitate saying that because I feel like everyone compares everything to a Sarah J Maas book, but we have just this very self-assured female main character, which I absolutely love, and she is, yeah, kind of an assassin, and then she gets captured, and it kind of just goes everywhere and anywhere. Like there's so much that goes on. There are dragons, which are really cool, and I feel like that's all I can really say. I went into this book not having any idea what it was about, and now I know why, because I don't know how people can explain this without like absolutely giving away everything. But it is a lot of fun. I think I did go in with very, very high expectations. I was really hoping that this would be just like my next obsession. Like I feel like so many people are obsessed with this book. It is one of just those like it books that really gets a lot of hype, and I think it does deserve the hype. I do, and I can see why people absolutely adore it, but I just don't think it's a 5-star for me. I just don't like care enough yet. Maybe if the series continues and I get more attached, I might change my mind. Like I could see this being a 5-star series in future, but right now I don't know, I don't feel quite obsessed, you know? But I will say very entertaining, very interesting, such a cool world and magic system and things like that. It is hard because our main character is very confused for a lot of this book, and so obviously as a reader you're kind of confused as well. I definitely feel like some things are quite obvious in terms of like secrets or like our main character, you know, which as readers you do find out like some of the secrets before our main character knows. But I think my issue with that is you figure it out as a reader before the main character does, and so it's a little bit frustrating that you're kind of like, I know this information, why can't you know this information? Because you're just like, oh, what's going on? Why are you acting like that around me? Why is this like it's just kind of frustrating. But I will say I have been enjoying the second half of the book more than I enjoyed the first half. So again, I still am really enjoying it. I feel like I just criticized it a lot. I think I just went in with very high expectations and it hasn't quite met those expectations, but still a good time, really enjoying it. I think if I had to give it a rating right now, it would be like 4 or 4.25, kind of around that area. But again, I haven't quite finished it, so I don't want to like really cement a rating before even finishing the book. So definitely recommend it if you're looking for a new fantasy world that you can just like dive into and escape from reality. I would really recommend it. It is very all-consuming. It is a little bit confusing. I did find it a lot when I started it. I was like, what is going on? I can't understand a word they're saying, but it does click after a while. So if you do persevere, I do think it is worth it. And I'm really intrigued to see what happens and how the story and how the world progresses. It's definitely got me hooked. It's definitely got me intrigued. But those are all the books that I have read in September. I hope you enjoyed hearing about them. Like I said, not like the best reading month ever, because I didn't find anything that I was like so obsessed with, apart from the rereads that obviously I was already obsessed with. But I had a good time. I had fun reading, and this is gonna fall. Oh, we saved it. And I'm excited to see what we pick up in October. But I hope you guys have a great day or night whenever you're watching this, and I will see you in my next video very soon. Goodbye.